Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Clean Library Podcast. I'm Marcus, and today we have special guest Mike Sorenson. And in the beginning, when God was passing out talents, it may seem as though Mike was given an extra portion. A true Renaissance man, Mike has a wide variety of interests and talents. Driven by the wind of his moods, he creates something beautiful from the obscure and mundane. Fantasy and science fiction have always been his favorite genres. They burst forth from the words on the page and from the illustrations he pours his heart into. With the palate of a true chef, he can season any dish. His shop is home to woodworking and knife making. An introvert since birth, he is content to sit on the side and enjoy the company of friends and family above all else. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for being on the show with us today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So before we jump into it and get to know you, I'm going to read your two truths and a lie. And this is another opportunity for me to pull ahead of Brock since he's not here today. So we'll see if I can add another point. All right. Number one, I've walked across the Golden Gate Bridge. Number two, I've climbed up and down the same canyon 3 times in one day. And number three, I've been stranded in the desert and rigged a car battery with household electrical wire to get out. All right. I don't know how I'm going to weave being stranded in the desert into the conversation, but we'll see what happens.
See what happens.
All right. So to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and how you got started as an author?
Well, it really starts with art. When I was a kid, I liked to draw pictures, and I kept drawing and drawing. And in 6th grade, I mean, I wasn't a great artist, but I was learning. 6th grade, I had an assignment. I think all 6th graders have this assignment to read so many thousands of pages in the school year. And I did that, and I got hooked on reading. And so I would do art. I would read. I would illustrate. Sometimes from television, sometimes from my own mind or something I've read. It wasn't really up until about 15 or so years ago that I actually started writing with intention of publishing a book or publishing anything. Before I would write, maybe try to write a story or something, but it would be, it wouldn't go anywhere. And so I would, I'd throw them away. There was really weren't worth anything. So it wasn't until about 15 or so years ago that I actually started writing with the intent to publish. And I started with a kind of a regular adventure novel, mixing fantasy with technology and some like Arabian Nights legend, Indiana Jones type stuff. And I wrote it. I got all the way through it. I don't know how many thousands of words it is. But I really haven't gone back to it. But it did open up my desire to write, and I continued to write. I continued to. I started a comic strip, or tried to start a comic strip, and I still work on that a little bit, trying to get it going. Then I wrote a novel, and then it kind of got to a crux where I was really frustrated, just with kind of the way the industry is, and the pressures of thinking I had to do things a certain way. And I thought, I'm just going to stop this. I'm just going to quit. I'm not going to worry about this anymore. Then I had this inspiration about 2 years ago. Just say it was divine inspiration, because I wouldn't have come up with it myself. I thought, you know what? I'm going to just publish my work in small portions. I'll just write a short story, put a nice cover on it, print it, and give it to people. And then I thought, well, why don't we expand that into a magazine, that other people can join me in that endeavor? So I got with my friends, my wife, and we decided, we'll put together a magazine. And I thought up a name for it. It's hard to find a name for speculative fiction magazines because they're all taken. Even the Latin and Greek names are used. It's crazy. Um, but we went from there, and we've published a couple of issues. We're on a third one now that's being printed, and I'm also published a short story. It's available. They're all going to be available on Amazon, or are available now, and that's where we are. I'm still planning on writing, independent novels or whatnot, but right
Right.
now I'm just focusing on the magazine.
Cool.
So
So, what's the magazine called?
speculative fiction illustrated.
Okay.
It's speculative in that any kind of genre would work in it, so long as it's kind of a fantastical genre,
Yeah.
anything but mainstream. And then illustrated because I try to have an illustration with each story.
Okay.
Kind of harkens back
So
to
are you?
the pulp fiction.
Yeah, yeah. So are you doing like authors submitting their work and then you're doing the illustrations for them? Or are they submitting the whole thing, the whole
Kind of
package?
both. It's designed for, well, I've designed it specifically for amateur writers,
Okay.
for people starting out or wanting to just publish a story they wrote, and they don't really want to feel the pressure of having to compete with professional writers or people who plan to be professional writers. And it's hard to get into magazines, it really is. But it's
Yeah.
kind of a showcase for people who want to write or people who want to illustrate. So far, I've been doing all the illustrating, and I've been doing quite a
Hmm.
bit of the writing. My friends have also contributed, and we've had some other people contribute as well. So we're really still at ground level, but we're starting to make some headway. So yeah, it's open to pretty much anybody as long as they follow
Cool.
the guidelines and stuff of submissions.
Right. So as far as, since our topic is clean, um, as far as levels of clean, are there guidelines that you have for that in people submitting, or?
Yes, it we don't we don't accept anything that's got profanity in it. Uh,
Okay.
on page sexuality or sexual imagery, pornography, we don't accept. The violence can't be grotesque or overly bloody. I mean, you write an action story, there's going to be violence in it.
Right,
But
right.
so long as it's tastefully done, I guess is one way of saying it. Uh, and then there's other options, other things that we don't like. We don't do alternative lifestyle stories, nor do we
Okay.
do stories that are, how should I say this, preachy uh, in either direction, whether against religion and against God, or completely for pushing away other people who, trying to force morality on people who don't want it. We're trying to create
Right.
this place where people can come and go, okay, I'd like to include God and religion in my story. Is that acceptable? Acceptable? Or another person who may want to debate religion with science or something, some kind of debate, and go through that
Yeah.
in their story. It's like, yes, that's acceptable. Just don't make it all one-sided. You know?
Right. So if there's an author out there listening who is interested, how do they submit, or what's the process for?
Uh, our website, we have a website called speculativefictionillustrated.com, which
Hmm.
is surprising this late in the game to be able to get a .com website. Um,
Yeah.
but you can go to the subscription link, and it lays out everything required. There's an email you can submit you can submit a story, or if you're an artist, you want to submit an illustration. There's a couple options there when you can submit. Well, you submit a portfolio type piece, and then we can either uh, give you the option of, well, you could contribute a piece that you want published, and we could maybe put it in as a gallery piece, or
Yeah.
maybe use it for a story, or even the cover. Or you can be assigned a story and say, okay, well, would you illustrate this story for us?
Gotcha.
So that's an option for them too.
Cool. So, are you, distribution wise, how did you figure all that out? And
Uh, we
figure
first
out the whole
started,
magazine world.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're pretty small, so we started out with Patreon. Our
Okay.
first three issues are through Patreon. Unfortunately, Patreon, uh, there's been some changes, um, and doesn't completely affect us, but it's enough that I really don't want to deal with it. And
Yeah.
so we're going to leave Patreon, and we're going to go to a direct sales like most authors do. You know, you have a leak, go to Amazon or something. We'll have direct sales of EPUBs, or Kindle. We have Amazon. We've got was it Apple Books, Rakuten Kobo.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be an option for a hard print copy from Amazon. And originally, the whole original idea was to publish it in a hard copy and distribute it via mail. We really only added the EPUB later when I thought, well, some people just want to have EPUB, so we'll offer that as an option too. But like I said, I
Right.
wanted to kind of go back to the nostalgic era of uh, in your hand fun magazine to read.
Yeah.
So it'll be available, and we're hoping to get a mailing list together so we can notify people as well as social media.
Yeah. Cool. It's kind of cool that like all that is available, so easily available now that you can use the
Oh
print
yeah,
on demand services and get your work out there without having to find a printer and contract with a printer and
yeah.
do
Well,
all that kind of stuff.
it's so easy to publish nowadays. It's so easy to
Yeah.
put something in print and sell it. The hard part, of course, is getting people to buy it.
Right, is the selling part.
Yeah.
Um, have you marketing is one of the things that I struggle with, and I think a lot of authors struggle with. So, have you cracked the code there, or what?
No, most of it's been word of mouth as of late.
Okay.
It's starting out, it's been word of mouth, uh, and or just talking to people, saying, "Oh, hey, I got this magazine" or something. We're hoping some social media interaction will help because I haven't really pushed social media lately,
Yeah.
and I think that may help a lot. But we're also looking into some sort of advertising. But that
Okay.
always seems to be it's the marketing seems to be the hardest, and retention I think is another thing because a lot of times people just don't read their emails, so they don't know
Mm-hmm.
the notification, and they don't unless they're like thinking of their author all the time, or you know every once in a while going, oh hey, I wonder if they published anything. It's really hard to get people's attention and say, hey, I got the next issue out, or hey, we got a new book. So it's
Yeah.
constant work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough because I mean you have to get it in front of people, and
Hmm.
then I mean I'm not a marketer, so I know they have a formula. The person has to see it so many times before they'll take action on it, and
Yeah.
how do you do that and balance the cost of ads
Yeah.
and marketing with the return? Like,
Yeah, and then there's keeping their attention just from, I mean, I've talked to, I have friends who want it, and I tell them, hey, it's coming out, and say, oh yeah, I got to go get that. I've just been so busy, I've forgotten all about it. It's like work and everything else just throws it out of their mind, and they forget
right?
about it. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
really hard to keep the attention on it.
and like I've experimented with social media and the different platforms, and it's I think one thing people don't realize is how much work
Hmm.
social media is. To do it well, it can be a full-time job
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, it
Like
is.
I used to think when I would hear people like kids going to college and saying I want to major in social media marketing, I'd be like, that's not a real thing. You just want to be on TikTok all day. But it is. It's
It
like
is.
it's an
It really
actual
is.
full-time job. And now that I'm you know trying to build my own publishing author business and some other businesses, like I don't have the time, effort, or even the like I don't want to be on social media all day.
Yeah, I
But
don't either. I want to write. I want to do the
right,
work.
but you
But
have
you
to
have to do
understand the
that.
trends, and you have to
Yeah,
understand what to say and when to say it and when to post, and like it's a lot
it
of work.
is.
So
Yeah, and
it's a
we
tough nut
also,
to crack.
and with the magazine, we also have options for advertising. So if an author wants to advertise traditionally, then that's another way of doing it. Just submit
Yeah,
an advertisement. I'm open for a
cool.
lot of things at this point in time.
So do you, when you introduce it to people as a magazine, do you get a certain response compared to if you just said it was like a short stories, or do you,
Uh, People are
I don't
usually
know.
pretty impressed with it, or that I'm actually
Okay.
doing a magazine. Um,
Yeah.
I think a magazine, there are some pros and cons to magazines. Pros are you get a variety of stories that you can look at and choose which one you like, and it's kind of opening a Christmas present. You never really know. Well, usually a Christmas present, you know what you're going to get. But if you don't know what you're going to get, then it's nice to be able to open that and go, oh, hey, this is cool. This is cool. Oh, no, it's okay. But this is cool. And
Yeah.
you get to see that, and you get every issue comes out, and you get something different. The cons
Right.
are that, well, it's kind of the same with it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's nice to have the variety, but sometimes people want the same thing over and over, and so they find their favorite authors and they keep buying their books. Magazines don't really offer that. Um, for that
Right.
reason, that's why we set it up as a showcase type thing to let authors be able to put their work out there, kind of a sampler, and then people can go, well, okay, I'm going to see if this person has more work online or at Amazon or something, to see if they're trying to sell their stuff, and
Right.
I'll give them a try. It's it's got a lot of advantages, and there's disadvantages as well, but it's kind of how it is with anything.
Yeah. So how do you, if you, I mean, this sounds like it's taking up a lot of time and effort. So is your own novel kind of taking a back burner
Yeah,
to the magazine?
yeah. I mean, I have a day job, so this is kind of a hobby business. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't get to spend as much time writing and doing artistic pursuits as much as I would like. Fortunately, I have a
Yeah.
team that helps, and I got to hand it to them. Mark and Kristen Wilkinson they're my friends. Mark's an aspiring writer as well. They're both very smart. They see a lot of things that I miss in stories. They also have a lot of talents in other areas. Science is predominant in their family. Um,
Hmm.
and then my wife is very encouraging. She sees a lot of things in the stories too when she reads them, and she wants to make sure they make sense, they're cohesive. But she's
Right.
mostly there to encourage us and just keep us going, because I mean, it's like every day I have doubts, and every other day I want to just kind of give up and say, the heck with this. It's too hard.
Right.
And she says, no, keep going, keep going. So it's great to have a team behind it. And
And I find if my wife tells me that it's something I should keep going with, that I should listen. At least that's my
yes,
experience.
yeah, yeah, don't give up faith. You'll get through there. You'll get to it somehow, whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
a traditional magazine would offer editing services to the people who are submitting. So do
Mhm.
you do that, or do you expect the
Um,
stories to come edited and polished and finished?
no, where it's an amateur setup for amateur writers and artists, we
Okay.
do offer editing. I mean, I tell on the web page, it says that we'll look at the story, we'll read it, we'll suggest changes. If there are any editing issues, we'll put them in there, and you can fix them or choose to keep them however you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to make those changes or not in your story, to help it flow better, you can do that too. We're not saying we're professional writers and we know how to teach you how to write a book or a
Right.
story, but there are some things that we can pick out and go, okay, this is obviously an issue. You need to fix that. But we're not going to tell you how to do it because we may not know ourselves. It just doesn't sound right. So
Right.
we offer
Right.
that. Same with the art.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
we do offer that little bit of advice, counsel. It's not really, I mean, I don't charge anybody to publish in the magazine, but I
Okay.
don't pay anybody either. It's the amateur status that kind of saves me on that.
Right.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
it's free for all, but at the same time, some there's some contests, some magazines that have restrictions on people being able to enter their stories if they've already published and been paid for it. So it kind of helps them to be able
Okay.
to get to an other higher level without having to have that anchor or that chain holding them back. At
Right.
least that's been my experience with some things.
So, do you feel like there's a big enough market for clean stories,
I think
or do you
so.
think that's a disadvantage? Yeah.
I think,
So
well, I think
how
over,
do you connect with those people?
well, same way Mark connected with you and Brock at that symposium a couple months ago.
Yeah.
You find them either through going to events, find them online. You might even just Google clean writing and find a group of people who are looking for clean writing and just join their group. You may just
Hmm.
talk to friends and neighbors, family, and get ideas from them. Sometimes it feels like you're just throwing stuff out there and you're hoping somebody picks it up.
Right.
I think overall in the industry, it is a disadvantage just because people want the edginess to stories. I think there are enough people who don't want that in their lives. They're willing to look for it. And I think uh, in the past, my experience with reading books has been that the stories themselves are really good, and if people put bad stuff into them, they're just adding it as decoration. It's not really integral to the story. They still
Yeah.
could tell a good story, but they could leave all that other stuff out. And I think you can do that. I think you can tell a great story, even really compelling, hard to read, poignant stories that tear at the very soul of human existence and still leave all the edgy stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. I experienced that in my first book, and it wasn't like it was terrible or crazy edgy or anything, but it had some, maybe PG-13 type stuff in it.
Uh-huh.
And my kids were younger and I wanted them to be able to read it. So I created like a teen version of the book. And after doing all that work, I realized that the teen, if it was so easy to cut it out, then why was it in there in the first place? And I just
Exactly.
what, yeah, just went with the teen version, which is more closer to maybe a PG rating
Yeah.
as the final version. Because, and it
Yeah.
was it was kind of eye opening to me. I'm like, yeah, it was so easy to take this out and not have to change or explain or do anything to the story to make it work without it, that it didn't need to be there in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's you feel the pressure to put it in there, but if you stand back and go, okay, I'm going to stick to my morals, um, and whatever happens, happens. I just have to have faith that it's going to go the way heaven intends it, God intends it. And if you believe in God,
Yeah.
and that's the way, that's a good outlook. For people who don't have that faith, I don't know what to tell you. That's where I work. That's
Right.
how I work. But I don't try to push that on other people either. I try to share it, but I don't try to shove it down their throats.
Right. Right. And I think that's important, that in order to have choice in what you consume, you have to have knowledge of what it is you're choosing. So,
Hmm. Yes.
you know, and I think that's something that we've learned on this podcast as well, is that if someone wants spicy or whatever, that's a choice and that's on them. But it's, how do you find it? How do you know what is what?
Yeah.
And if that your choices are what you actually want, and you have to have information to do that. Like, there's got to be a way to find that.
Yeah, there
So
needs to be, and it would be nice to have that kind of that advertising out there. Clean books. Go to this website for clean books. I
right,
don't know how
right.
to do it. That's bigger than me.
Well, it's a topic that we've been tackling and talking a lot about, is, and we kind of, the discovery we made is, if you want to have a library of clean books, you have to have a way to determine whether they're clean first. So you have to have a
Yes.
system of rating them first before, like, the
Right.
horse and the cart, you know. Um, and then how do you do that? And is it
Yeah.
leveraging humans or technology, or,
Well,
um,
some of that exists already. I've heard that there's a website where people put their fan fiction and they have ratings. I think Royal Road is a website that I'm familiar with, and I think it does have a rating system. I haven't really been on there a lot, but it may have a rating
okay,
system. And I used to belong to the Science Fiction Book Club years ago, and they would send a catalog out monthly, and they would have uh, the book selections, and then they would have a little notation, maybe a little asterisk or a little cross thing that would denote a book that had offensive material in it, maybe explicit language or sex, or maybe it was offensive to uh, in a religious way or something. And so
yeah,
they actually had those little trigger warnings in their catalog. I don't think it would be that hard of a thing to do, to have a trigger warning published on the back of a novel that says contains explicit material, may not be suitable for people who don't want to, or for kids at a certain age, or don't want to, or
right,
people who don't want to read that. It's, it's,
yeah.
it's
And I guess a company as big as Amazon could require it, like, in
yeah,
order to kind of start forcing it. They could make it a requirement. I don't know that they would, because they make a lot of money off of it.
yeah. It's hard for a clearinghouse like that to regulate. It's almost got to come from the publishers themselves, or the authors really
Mhm.
would be ideal. Because with
Yeah,
independent authors, you're not going to have a publisher regulating what goes on the cover.
right.
Whereas,
And unless you're an author who's specifically trying to target that demographic, what would be the motivation to do
yes,
that? But I, I,
yeah, that's
I tried. I've done it on one of my books, where just in the blurb on Amazon, it has one paragraph of kind of a content. It has this kind of content, this kind of content, and stuff. And I
mhm.
don't know if it's made a difference. I don't know that I've sold enough to really run those metrics or look at the data there. But um, I decided, if I'm talking about this and promoting it, I probably should walk the walk and do it myself.
Yeah, yeah. I need to do that too. I don't know if our description says anything about it being clean. That's one of the things about the magazine, the Speculative Fiction Illustrated moniker, is I want it to be recognized as a mark of quality, kind of like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval.
Right.
If we plan to release other fiction under that name, such as SFI presents such and such book by such and such author, it would give people an idea of,
Yeah.
oh, it's a good book, kind of like the Harlequin romances. You pick up a Harlequin, it's pretty tame. or at least it used to be. I don't know. I don't read romances, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And starting to advertise in such a way that that connection is made. When people see
Hmm.
the name, they have that expectation.
Yeah.
And I think, especially with kind of your niche of shorter stories and stuff, there's definitely, I would think there would be parents or teachers who would want to introduce short stories that would be excited to find a magazine they know they could trust every month or quarterly when it comes out, that
I,
I can use this stuff with my kids or with my students because I don't have to worry about what's in it,
it it would
and
be
make it
nice to get
fun.
to that point. It really would. We're pretty small right now. Our publishing is very limited. We're only twice a year, but it would be nice to get to where we could publish quarterly or even every other month and have
Yeah.
a larger variety of writers that kids can look at and go, okay, I'm going to do a report on this story, or I'm going to read this novel and do a report on it. Uh, I also, there's something else I've been thinking of lately, that a lot of times I'll run across books that just are kind of published by somebody just by themselves. The only book they ever wrote. I read it. It's a great book, but hardly anyone's ever going to find it because they're not a famous
Right.
author, and they don't keep publishing. But they're these unique standalone books that somebody's written. It may be fiction, maybe nonfiction, but they're wonderful. And
Mm-hmm.
as wonderful as it is to have a market that publishes series and lots of books from different authors continuously, like having franchises, as critical as that is to the economy and to people's entertainment. I still think those standalone niche books are very important to society as well. It'd
Mm-hmm.
be nice to be able to see those more often.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've found over the past couple of years. Really, I've tried to focus more on independent authors and small authors like that, just because I'm one.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's some like the quality is really high. I mean, yeah, every once in a while you find one, you're like, yeah, that needed some work before they released it.
hmm
But for the
yeah.
most
You
part,
do.
the quality is just as high as anything coming from the big publishers, or even better in some instances. And it's just so hard to stand out with the volume. And it's a business, so like, the
Yeah,
bookstores get paid to put the big books in at the front on the table, and so it's tough. But there's that'd be one thing I always tell people is find indie authors and read them, because they're really good. You're missing
yeah.
out if you're not looking for those type of books,
Oh yeah, definitely.
for
I mean,
sure.
yeah, there is something to be said for a stable inflow and a stable income, but there's also a lot to be said just for people who want to share a little bit of themselves, and we should really look for those too. Because it may make them. If somebody
Yeah.
writes a story, somebody likes it, they may be inspired to write another one. Maybe they'll become uh, a well-known author, be able to create some sort of a franchise, which in turn boosts the economy and boosts this, something positive in society. Uh, Kind of how it works, isn't it? You start small, you create something and people like it, and then you become big and you you go further. You inspire more people.
Yeah. And if when you see someone else do that and succeed, then you're more likely to jump in and do it yourself and take that risk.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um,
And that's what I want the magazine
and
to
if
do is to inspire people to make us take a step, make that leap.
right, right, and that's a step they can take that's a little less scary than having to
Yeah.
figure out self-publishing all by themselves, or
Hmm.
submitting it to a publisher. And I think that's great. It's a great opportunity and a great resource for people who have great stories to tell and are dipping their toe into, is this something I should do and spend
Yeah.
hours and hours and hours of my life doing? Is it worth it? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And or years and years of my life, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a no pressure or very low pressure option for people who may want to take that step.
Yeah.
It's so
So are you, for your own personal novel, is that something that you still are looking to complete, or is it just one of those things
um
that might happen someday if you get around to it?
well, I do have a novel that is finished. It's
Okay.
a I guess you could call it, I think they're called fix-up novels. Back in the day, they take a bunch of short stories that were very similar and they put them all together into one book, kind of like Martian Chronicles or I, Robot. Um,
Yeah.
this one is actually a little bit more cohesive than that. It has actually a central plot, and I've attached short stories to it that fill out the universe and also push the plot along. It's more or less done. It needs some polishing. My friends are going to go through it and do some editing on it and just pick out pieces, places that I need to clarify or fix. And then I'll need to do a cover piece for it, of course. But I'm hoping this year to get it published.
Cool.
Um, it's
And
pretty exciting, actually.
are you gonna go the self-publishing route or
Yeah,
try traditional?
yeah. I'll do self-publishing. One of the things with the magazine is we've kind of had to build, and one of the hardest part is we've had to build a publishing company, more or less.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's a company that existed. Uh, well, it was the company my friends started back 20, 25 years ago for a game they were putting
Okay.
together. And there's still the game's still available, and we're still publishing that game. It kind of went defunct for a little while, but then we resurrected it for the magazine, and now we're building it up again. But yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into establishing a publishing company, even a
Yeah.
small one. And obviously, we contract the printing out, and we do sales through Amazon and stuff like that. And it's very small and rudimentary, but we're hoping to make it worthwhile, you know, and
Hmm.
maybe give people options to go, hey, the Tower Ravens route, let's go that way. Let's try them, see what they
Right.
do. So,
Yeah. I did the same thing. My son graduated in editing and publishing, and he's written some, and he's an artist. So we we did the same
hmm,
thing. We started a publishing company so that we can publish our own works under that company. And it just, I looked at doing it just under my
yeah,
individual name, and it just, there's too many advantages, and it's just a lot smarter to do it under a
it,
company. And
it is. And you have a bit of a buffer there for protection. And then you just have
right.
and it gives you a little bit more, street cred, I guess. I mean, it's like, oh, it's a publishing
Yeah.
company. It's not just somebody who wants to publish a book and stick it on a counter at
Right.
the store. It's somebody who wants to actually distribute. So it just makes people think you're a little bit more serious about doing something.
Right. And then it kind of forces you to treat it as a business as well, which
Yeah,
is important.
it gives you a bunch of obligations you have to fulfill, and you have to do it. You can't just give up on it.
Right. Yeah. It means something. That's a good motivator.
It is. It is.
So if you, in this kind of journey of putting this together and figuring it all out, what advice would you give to someone who is just right at the point where, like, I would like to write stories, or I have a story to tell, and but just don't know what to do?
This was a tough question for me to figure out, but I think it came down to is don't let people tell you how to write. Don't let them tell you have to write this way. or that have to put this
Hmm.
stuff into it or do this. Just sit down and write your story. Let it come out. Uh, you may have, I mean, you're gonna have to revise it. You have to make changes, but don't just follow the crowd and let them do and just do whatever you want to, or make them do what they want you to do. Just do what you want. Write what you know.
Yeah.
Write how you feel. Um, I mean, there is a point where if you're very popular, you have to write what the market wants. And I see that every time a book comes out that people are, authors are following the trend. Um,
Right.
if you're going to do that, then yeah, look at it that way too. For somebody who's maybe you're just doing it as a hobby, you're a part-time writer, then you can probably get away with writing whatever you want to because you're not too worried about making a lot of sales.
Right.
But I think initially just do it the way you want to, and then if you feel like you have to be more in line with the way it's done in the market, go that route. If not, just keep riding it, just so long as it makes you happy and fulfills you.
Yeah,
So
that's great advice. And I mean, if you think back to all the biggest authors, if they had followed the trends of their day, they wouldn't have written the books they wrote that then became the new trends.
yeah, yeah,
You know?
really, that's true. That's true.
So
It happens. It cycles through all the time.
yeah, and feedback, of course, is valuable and important, and reviews. But if you're not writing the story that you want to write, then it's just a job. You're
Yeah,
doing work
well,
for somebody else.
it could be that the story you're writing for yourself is a story that a lot of people want.
Right.
Um, I have an author, a favorite author. It's James P. Blaylock. He's been writing since the '70s, late '70s, and his stories are a little bit quirky. He doesn't
Hmm.
write the stories and the characters that other people write. Even back then, he wasn't writing those things. Sometimes a little hard to. Sometimes he's an acquired taste, but once you get into his stories, I mean, they're my favorite stories, and he's an award-winning author. He's well known,
Hmm.
um, but he did his own thing. He didn't follow the route as the same pattern as everybody else,
Yeah.
and he's a fun read. So yeah, it can
And
happen.
yeah, that's cool. All right. So when does your next edition of the magazine come out so people can look forward to it?
It's actually in print right now, so we're
Okay.
going to, like I said, this is the last Patreon subscription we're sending out. It will be available on Amazon shortly thereafter. We want to give our
Okay.
people who have subscribed an option to enjoy it before everybody else has the option to
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Sure.
But it'll go out on Amazon. We'll have it set up pretty quickly after that, and then we'll have we'll direct people close down the Patreon account, and we'll move our total operation over to our website and then social media, and we'll try to keep people informed that way. We'll try to get a mailing list together. Hopefully, people will be willing to sign up to it so we can send stuff to their emails, or even text them if they're willing to have that option. I don't
Yeah.
want to impose on anybody's privacy too much. And then we'll try some advertising and go that route. So it's
Cool.
coming out this month.
All
So
right. So everyone out there, look it up, check it out.
yeah,
And if you're an author that looking for a place to submit your stories, um, give it a go. Um, we're about out of time, so we need to get back to the two truths and a lie, which we didn't cover at all. So this is going to be fun. Let me remind everybody. One, I've walked across the Golden Gate Bridge. Two, I've climbed up and down the same canyon 3 times in one day. And three, I've been stranded in the desert and rigged a car battery with household electrical wire to get out. I mean, I can see any one of those as true.
completely plausible.
um, yeah, completely plausible. I mean, I've been on scout trips where I had to hike in and out multiple times because kids got sick or whatever. So
Yeah.
totally could happen. Walking across the Golden Gate Bridge, very big thing to do when you visit San Francisco. So let's see. I think this is just going to be throwing a dart at the board. I'm going to say, I'll say Golden Gate Bridge is the lie.
You got it.
All
You
right.
did. You've got it. You are now one up.
Nice. I mean,
Yeah.
I've driven across the Golden Gate Bridge multiple times, but I've never walked it.
We were there last year and we went to see it. We walked on it, but I did not go all the way across. We went pretty close to the first, well, not even close to the first pillar, I guess, but it was a nice day anyway. Yeah, I didn't go all the way across it.
Yeah.
So yeah, good job.
All right. This is good. I'm stacking the deck before Brock gets involved. It's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us. We've really appreciated it. And thank you for the work you're doing and giving authors a place to publish their work and showcase their work, and artists as well. For those of you out there listening or watching, please subscribe and share. That's the best way that we can get the word out about new authors and about the podcast. Is if you tell your friends about it. So please do so, and we'll catch you next time on the Clean Library Podcast.